June 8th, 2023 was when I posted my last video. That was tying in with the release of Across the Spider-Verse, and yeah, ever since then I haven't posted any more videos. The whole YouTube channel, combining with what I have to do off screen with watching all the films in preparation, as well as just having some own personal things in my life, became a bit too much to juggle all at once, so unfortunately I had to sacrifice this at the time, and ever since then my life has drastically changed for the better. Not to say I didn't enjoy this, because I actually really loved it, but there wasn't enough hours in a day or days in a week to have enough time for this, work and other things. But yeah, I'm now at a place where I'm happy to return back to this and give it another crack. And with the release of Dune 2, feels like there's no better time to return. Dune Part 2 is no doubt one of the biggest films of recent years, and that's going to stay the case for the years ahead. So yeah, as I said, no better time felt more appropriate than now to return to the YouTube channel. I ranked Denis Villeneuve's films when the first part of Dune came out in 2021, as he is one of my favorite directors of all time. I tend to do the same this time around as well. But first, now that we have 3 Dune films, a good place to start is to rank all 3 of them. Now, I am aware that there are some mini-series which contain about 3 episodes each, all about an hour and a half in duration, so I could have technically included those, but I thought maybe I'll save them for a Dune Messiah ranking in the near future. But before we get into my ranking, please let me know what yours is down below. I feel like ours are going to be very similar this time around, but nonetheless I'd like to hear them. And without further delay, let's get into it. The original Dune film by David Lynch is a very fascinating one because it's just such a bonkers film to watch, and honestly, watching through it I thought I was on drugs. Obviously the Dune book served as inspiration for the Star Wars films, yet the Star Wars films came first on the big screen 7 years before this Dune film, to be precise. Although this film does come out 7 years after A New Hope, it feels like it comes out way before, given the effects used, the acting, the way the whole script is crafted together. And the real main issue, which generates a load of other negatives about this film, is the fact that they try and cram, well, I guess 2 books worth of content into a 2-hour film. And yeah, a very good example of why that's a bad idea is just looking at the other 2 Dune films that have come out. You know, these are 2-hour 45-minute films which have covered just one book and have been very thorough with what they're going through. So to no surprise, this film just feels so rushed, and there's so many details that are just glossed over, not given any development. The same for characters. And yes, this novel has gained the reputation that it's quite impossible to translate onto the big screen, and you can see the struggle here as they just don't really have a way of explaining things in a very interesting or way that makes sense. It's all just a lot of exposition or just random sequences that happen which just have no context to it really, or just confuse the hell out of you. And even the things they do explain, it's not done in a way which is memorable, so by the end of the runtime they're relying on you to remember that and all the little details, but it's impossible to when there's so much to cover and there's just so many mind-boggling things which happen in between. It's just all a convoluted mess. There's awkward acting, unclear moments, and to be honest, it feels like the film is a lot older than it actually is, especially when you make that comparison with Star Wars right beside it. You know, it has a larger budget and it came out later, so it could have dragged it through a few things from that on how to make massive sci-fi film, but yet it spoiled the potential. Many loved Dune Part 1 when it first came out, I being one of them, but as time went on, I noticed there was a lot of criticism for it for being boring or just being an exposition dump. And while I can understand that, if you wanted to truly appreciate the Dune story, and it's obvious there's going to be 2 parts, Part 1 is extremely necessary and works so well in what it's trying to do and allows the second part to thrive because of it. You know, Dune has a very rich lore, just such a creative world, something that's vastly different to what we've experienced before. So of course you're going to need time and development to flesh that out, show the scale of everything, and I think Denis Villeneuve couldn't have done a better job with it. First of all, it's a much more mature sci-fi film, especially comparing to Star Wars like I've already done in this video before, and it takes a much slower pace, so you just have to be patient with it, but it's very beneficial if you do stick with it. But on top of that, the cast is absolutely stacked. There's a lot of recognizable faces, some of whom are in a different role than we've previously seen them in, and it works really well in their favor. But the obvious positive here, just like with any Denis Villeneuve film, the spectacle, the cinematography, it captures this world just in such beautiful fashion. It makes you feel the scope of everything, just how unique every little planet is, every moment, every detail. It's made very special thanks to the cinematography. It was obvious from the start that Dune was going to be a part 1, and I don't know why many couldn't see that was going to happen. So while a lot of it is setting up or explaining the world and everything, I really enjoyed the experience, and it felt like you were sucked into this world for 2.5 hours, and at the end of the day, film is escapism, so it did just that. And for all that world building and setup from Dune Part 1, naturally, Dune Part 2 was going to thrive because of it, and that's exactly what happened. Look, I knew I was going to enjoy this film more than the first part, but I didn't know to what extent. As you can see by my rating, this is up there with some of the best films of the sci-fi genre and just in general. It trusts that you paid attention in Dune 1 and understood every detail. And yes, that can be quite challenging and mentally exhausting to focus in for the whole entire runtime, observing all these new things for the second time. If you do, then it just pays off massively. There's so many dynamics that if I went into detail on every little thing, this video would be way too long, but one is the character development for Paul Atreides, kind of an unorthodox development for a main character. You'd expect, you know, the cliche, start from nothing, rise to being this great hero, and while he does somewhat start as this frail character who's uninterested in leading, it takes a very different approach in the end game. Once again, there has to be a shout out to Craig Fraser for having some of the most beautiful cinematography since, well, Dune Part 1 in cinema. It truly is jaw-dropping at some of the visuals he was able to put onto the big screen, and yeah, it really enhances the viewing and makes this one of the more beautiful films ever made. A lot happens in the Dune books, especially that first novel, which this film is also covering, and this shows that Denis Villeneuve took the wise approach of splitting it into 2 parts with long duration and really fleshing it out. I think Frank Herbert would be very proud of the adaptations of his novel, and like I said, this feels like you're being transported into a different world completely, because there's so much that's fleshed out, so many little details, which it's hard not to feel like you're amongst it all. It's rare that a blockbuster with such huge ambitions actually meets those ambitions, because a lot of times you see it underwhelm or disappoint slightly, never really reaching the gargantuan heights of its potential, yet Dune 2 does that, and it's going to be a film that many are talking about for years to come. So yeah, that was my Dune ranking, all 3 films. I've actually yet to see those mini-series that I mentioned in the intro, but I'm probably going to check them out now that I have watched this second part of Dune. Anyway, yeah, please let me know your ranking down below, and if you could like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. I know I've been away for a while, so that would be much more appreciated now. And if you are returning after a while away from this channel like I have been, then I'd also really appreciate it if you let me know down below. I look to be back consistently now, so I'm hoping to stay on top of that, but thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you in my next video, whatever that may be.